Respected elders, my dear friends and youths, as you all know, we are in a highly modern scientific world. We have gathered here for an intellectual, thought-provoking discussion. Hence, the subject, a journey beyond our perception. I repeat, it's a journey beyond our perception. The subject is very delicate, highly technical, analytical, logical, philosophical, and of course, underpinned by scientific approach. I request you to bestow your best attention. I try my best to drive in a simple manner with simple wordings. I take only 45 minutes per day, the time of one period in which one can grasp and concentrate. I would also request you to bring your children. Let us hear their minds. Let us not forget that they are the next generation. Okay? Let us start from beginning. As a human being, not belonging to any caste, religion or philosophy. As a person, few basic questions must arise in thyself. Who am I? From where did I come? What is this journey? What is my true destiny? Departing from this life, where do I go? What is the relationship between me and my surroundings? What are its limitations? And so on. One who doesn't get these questions in thyself, I think, is no better than an animal. To support this, in our schools today, they teach that man is also an animal. Can you believe this? What an amount of tragedy, irony. What an ignorance. See, the food, sleep and sex are common in both human beings and animals. But still, human beings are not animals. One who can judge right and wrong, that is dharma and adharma, and act accordingly, is an intellectual. That's where he scores upon animals. That the Shakti, what we call as intelligence, through which he can perceive good or bad, merits and demerits, that is punya and papa. Any person belonging to any school of faith will say, when asked for the source of dharma and adharma, or the very right and wrong, their sources are also their own sacred literature. These sources on which they believe are different and they disagree with each other. Hope you are following. Let me put this in an understandable fashion. A person born in a family will be brought up as per their family customs, faith, tradition and culture. Naturally, he will have a lean towards his family elders, philosophers, customers, tradition, culture and faith. The bondage of attachment with these are really stronger. He always argues that the philosophy which he and his family elders are following is superior. The sacred literature or the sacred book which they refer and believe is the final authority. The do's and don'ts mentioned in that sacred book is the only ultimate source. Of course, we are helpless in the system, the very system. We cannot choose our mother. Can we? No. We haven't chosen the place or school of faith in which we are born. The upbringing of self is also not in our hands. Up to certain age, we are helpless. But after the maturity of mind, we can't blindly follow. Each individual must think, use his brain, and do an inquiry in himself. At least, for some time, he should forget that he belongs to one sect or religion or philosophy. It's not an easy job, I do agree. But if you don't do this, you will be fanatic or a blind believer. The merits and demerits is what we call as punya and baba, or dharma and adharma, are accepted by all religious and philosophical thinkers in the world. That's a point to be noted, really a point to be noted. Here, the question is how to classify these merits and demerits, on what basis, and on what source. The do's and the don'ts, the right and the wrong, dharma or adharma, that is our actions, good or bad, in total. The answer given by all philosophers is the sacred literature is the only source of dharma and adharma, or the right and wrong. Here, let us tackle our basic question. By the theory of knowledge, we can fulfill our desire to know things through three means: the object, the person, and the sentence. Let us take an example. I want to know about a computer. The means to know is three ways. Seeing the computer, what is seeing is believing. Number two, if computer is not available, I can know about it through the person who knows about the computer. And number three, if both computer and person, that's object and the person, are not available, the third and the only option is literature, that is books, through which one can know about computer. These are the only three sources to know. No other sources at all. Is there any other source? No. So, the object, the person, and the sentence are the only sources through which a person can know about the things one desires to know. And again here, the big question is, the very big question here is how to believe these three: the person, the object, and the sentence. On what source we can believe these three? And that is the subject of our discussion chosen. What is the source of our belief? If we say we don't want to tackle this, we just believe, then it's blind. What makes you to disbelieve all other philosophies from one which you are believing and following? Is your birth in a particular caste or religion itself is a source of belief? Have you made any inquiry about your own belief? If not, why? If yes, what is the source? The source to believe your philosopher and his self-proclaimed sentences is what? Before entering deep into this, let us find answer for the question, what is the source of our belief? How do we believe? Whether it's object, the person, the sentence. Let me explain with an example. A person wants to purchase a stainless steel utensil from a shop and has moved in. The moment stainless steel utensil is in his hand, his mind starts inquiring whether this is a genuine product. And his investigation starts. He immediately asks for a magnet to test whether it is stainless steel. After the test, still he is not satisfied. The benefit of doubt is pricking in his mind. This is repeated in another shop also. Finally, his mind decides to go for a branded product like TTK or Hawkinson or Crystal Steels. Same is the case with other products like TV, mobile, refrigerator, fan, etc. Now, tell me what makes him to believe a branded product without an inquiry or testimony than an unbranded product. So, what was the source? Please think. Anybody who can guess and answer? Can you? Yeah? Your own experience is the source of to believe. No, not at all. See, those who believe blindly, some self-posed godly men have different kinds of experiences. Still, all will not believe. Is it not? Any others? No? I tell you. The source of our belief is authenticity. The famous company which makes stainless steel products know well what stainless steel means. What are its ingredients? And in turn, for that company, the technology and Indian standard specifications are the source or the authority. Same case with the doctor. People will believe the doctor because he is qualified and his prescription of medicines are as per the standard medical science recommendations. A doctor cannot prescribe as per his whims and fancies. Is it not? Now, tell me, when we call a person honest, only when he abides and follows rules and regulations of the company or organization in which he is working. In turn, the company or organization will trust or believe him. Is it not? So, for everything there is an authority. I repeat, for everything there is an authority. Hence, the source of our belief is authenticity. We can believe an authentic person, an authentic product, authorized company, and authentic sentence, like doctor's prescription and all. Is that clear? Now, let us come to our basic questions. Who am I? Where do I come from? And so on. I am hearing the words like God, soul, punya, that is unseen merit, papa, that is unseen demerit, dharma, adharma, hell, that is naraka, heaven, that is swarga, and so on. I would like to know about these things. As already discussed, let us approach in a scientific way. See, there are two types of substances existing. One within the perception of our sense organs and the other beyond the perception of our sense organs. And in turn, there are three primary ways or means to know the things. Only three. The very first one is the perception, the flawless contact, the flawless sense organs with flawless objects. The second one is inference, the flawless reasoning. And the third one, the verbal testimony, the flawless word conveying valid meaning. The means which generate correct or true knowledge are valid, and that do not are invalid. Now, our question regarding God, soul, dharma, adharma, etc. Because these are the substances or the objects which are beyond the perception of our sense organs. These have to be conveyed by some authority, is it not? We can't just believe blindly. So the primary ways or means are only three: the perception, the inference, and the verbal testimony. The first one, the sense perception, do not convey substances like God, soul, dharma, adharma, etc. because these are not the subject for it, is it not? And the second one, that is a flawless logical reasoning, that is inference. And again, this is not an independent means of valid knowledge. As we know, it always dependent on perception and verbal testimony. You all know very well, with logical calculations, one can prove on blackboard that 4 plus 3 is equal to 8. But the truth is, 4 plus 3 is equal to 7. And you know, we start on blackboard, let x be is equal to something, and apply all sorts of logic, and finally we can prove LHS is equal to RHS, is it not? Hence, independently, logical reasoning or inference do not convey the tenets like dharma, adharma, God, soul, etc. I quote the famous saying, nothing can be proved by logic because anything and everything can be proved by logic. So, now the only means to know objects or the substances which are beyond our sense organs is the verbal testimony, that is, the flawless word conveying valid meaning. So with this background, the conclusion is, literature or the sacred script is the only means to know the entities which are beyond the perception of our sense organs. At this point, I would like to clear one thing. One, that is, we need not brand this as unscientific. After all, what is science? It is a systematic study of existing things. The things which are beyond the perception of our sense organs may be existing. We do not have an authority through which we can deny it. Is there any hard and fast rule that all the existing things are to be known? No, not at all. At one particular point of time in the history, mankind was unaware of many things which we are aware today. There was a time in which things like bacteria, virus, radiation, cells, cosmic rays, electromagnetic waves, atoms, protons, neutrons, etc. were unknown. Today, with a scientific, systematic study and research, more than 100 wonders of the world are known, which were completely unknown just 2 centuries back. Can anyone claim that these were non-existing? No. No one can. So, the substances which are beyond the perception of our sense organs cannot be denied. They may exist. They may exist. With a proper research and systematic study, we can explore them. We have to wait for the day to come. Until then, our study and research has to go on. We can't simply categorize as unscientific. An intellect, modern thinker must realize this. Let us stop branding spiritual science as unscientific. Let us stop it. Any questions, please, before we move forward? Any questions? No? Okay. See, almost all philosophies in the world are dealing with the same subject, with their own sacred scripts as authority. The big task is, which is that authority on which we can depend or rely or believe. As already discussed, the verbal testimony is the only source on this extrasensory objects. See, the verbal testimony is of two folds. Paurusheya, that is human composition, and Apaurusheya, the non-human composition. Of these two, which one is the valid authority is the question. Before tackling this, we have a big opponent who denies the very existence of substances which are beyond the perception of our sense organs, and the scripts or the philosophies which deal with this subject. And he is an upholder of physical pleasures, a materialist, an atheist. He says, if at all we accept that there are substances which are beyond our sense organs, then the question on which authority we have to rely, whether human compositions, that is Paurusheya, or non-human compositions, Apaurusheya, will arise. The substances beyond the perception of our sense organs do not exist at all. And that is the ethical and religious tenets like dharma, adharma, God, soul, unseen merit, punya, unseen demerit, that is papa, swarga, that is heaven, naraka, that is hell, etc., are not at all there. They do not exist at all. Do not crack your mind regarding these non-existing things. We are born accidentally. Let us enjoy. Enjoy and be happy till our death. Once you are dead, dead only. Your body will be burned to ashes. You won't return. Hence, borrow money, eat well with pure ghee and enjoy. And the big loan borrowed need not be repaid. Once you are dead, who is there to repay? And that's all. The chapter is closed. This is the theory of an atheist. It really sounds sweet, no? And we feel like following it. This theory or philosophy, as they claim, is very famous and attractive. Today, the mankind is leaning towards this philosophy. An atheist admits only the perception as a means of valid knowledge, and a few cases of reasoning. It seems today the modern science is also backing this theory in one or the other way. Let us analyze this attractive theory, which sounds very sweet. See, to accept or deny, we need evidence. Let it be anything. Without a proper evidence, you cannot simply deny extrasensory objects like God, soul, dharma, adharma, punya, papa, etc. Is it not? Can you deny without an evidence? See, one who denies the fundamental ethical religious tenets like dharma, adharma, which are extrasensory, is not a philosopher at all, because such a thinker's philosophy will go without a subject and purpose. So the ethical religious tenets like dharma, adharma, etc., that are beyond the sense of perception, have been accepted by all religious and philosophical thinkers. And that is a point to be noted. An atheist claims that teaching the absence of extrasensory objects like dharma, adharma, punya, papa, etc. itself is a subject for his philosophy. And its propagation will help people to lead an unrestricted, unbinded, free life of happiness. And that is the great purpose. It's a great service to society and to mankind in total. That's what they claim. Again, it sounds very sweet, no? That is why this philosophy is famous, very attractive, fascinates by good number of people. This sweet-sounding philosophy has to be analyzed. It is sweet to hear, but it is highly impractical and will result in a disastrous calamity. Just imagine if there are no laws and rules and no restrictions at all, what will be the situation? Can you imagine that? The fundamental ethical religious tenets like dharma, adharma, that is the basic right and wrong in this world, are rooted in the minds of human beings. If anybody tries to root out this, then the whole mankind will be lost. There can be no life at all. I should not harm anybody. Things belonging to others should not be theft. I must be good. I must serve the society. I must be a helping hand to others. I must sacrifice. Cruelty, partiality are bad, and so on. These are really the noble thoughts. If I harm others, God is there to punish. He is omniscient. He is omnipresent. He is looking at me. Hence I must be a good person. See, these fundamentals are the values of life, what we call, are deep rooted in the human minds. It is because of this mankind is leading a happy and cool life. Let us not forget that. If anybody wants to root out these, he is an enemy of mankind. That's why every philosopher starting from Buddhist refutes tooth and nail and denounces an atheist as a deadly enemy of human good. It only leads to might is right, which is a disastrous calamity. Really, a disastrous calamity. Here, one may argue that for the betterment of society and to lead a good, understandable, happy life, we ourselves can make some arrangement in the form of constitutional laws or rules. We need not accept or believe in extra-sensuous objects like God, dharma, adharma, etc. Even this sounds good. Really sounds good. But if analyzed further, its true colors will surface. Let us analyze with an example. What is right or good, that is dharma, for Westerns is wrong or bad or adharma for Easterns. To be specific, the fundamentalist Muslims, what they claim is good or dharma as per their sacred scripts is bad or adharma for Christians and others. So, what is good for one school of faith is bad for another school of faith. See, the whole world is burning. It's really a burning subject, is it not? See, every country has their own constitution, their own law, which hold good in their own land. It may not hold good in others' land. To solve any problem between two nations, we have the international law. This law is also framed by so-called intellectuals, which again are not accepted by major part of the globe. Hope you are understanding the problem. We are into the international problem. So again, we are back to our basic question on which authority or sacred script we can depend or rely, which in turn can convey the ethical and religious tenets like dharma, that is right and wrong, or good and bad, or merit and demerit, whether seen or unseen. So, we are back once again on the question on which authority or sacred script we can depend. As already discussed, verbal testimony is of two poles. Paurusheya, that is human compositions, and apaurusheya, non-human compositions. Now, the trustworthiness of these two is the core subject to be discussed. I hope you will give more attention. I want to repeat. The verbal testimony is twofold. Human compositions, that is paurusheya, and non-human compositions, apaurusheya. These are the only two sources through which we can reveal the subjects or the objects which are beyond the perception of our sense organs. The very trustworthiness of these two is the core subject to be discussed now. Let us do that. Let us discuss tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, friends. As already discussed, Agama, that is the verbal testimony, is twofold. Paurusheya, human compositions, and apaurusheya, non-human compositions. Now, the trustworthiness of these two is the core subject to be discussed. Please give more attention here. I repeat once again. The trustworthiness of these two, that is either paurusheya or apaurusheya, human composition and human non-human composition, is the core subject to be discussed. The tenets that are beyond sense perception like God, dharma, adharma, merits, demerits, that is punya and papa, etc., cannot be comprehended through the statements or compositions made by individual persons, because there is a possibility of ignorance and deception on the part of such persons. Nacha paurushena vakkena tatsiddhihi ajnana vipralambayoho praptehe. Ajnana vipralambayoho praptehe. In the whole world, we haven't come across a person who is not an ignorant. Is it not? Can anybody claim that he is an omniscient? Can anybody? No, not at all. See, our experience itself is the proof that we are not omniscient. Here, I'd like to quote Mr. Adalati, a NASA scientist wordings. He says, probably on this complex world or the globe, he says, observing a system that varies on several time scales could be likened to an ant watching the hands of a clock. He never stops there, and also he admits, perhaps, with the ant sitting on the other hand. Wow, what is saying is this? Here, he clearly admits that our lifespan and our mind both are too small to understand this world. An apt example of ant has been given here. I repeat, observing a system that varies on several time scales could be likened to an ant watching the hands of a clock. Perhaps with the ant sitting on the other hand. Suppose, even for an argument's sake, just for argument's sake, an omniscient is accepted. Let us accept that one person is omniscient. Then, the question is, how to believe that he is not a deceptor? How to believe that he is not a deceptor? Here it is argued that the persons who composed the sacred script are not ordinary. They are trustworthy because they are perfect, omniscient, absolute absence of wrong understanding, deceitful desire, defective sense organs, etc. And that is to say, they are not subject to any sort of mental and physical defects at all. Thus, their trustworthiness is proved beyond doubt and accepted. Again, I request you to be more concentrated on the sentences I deliver. Please be analyzing throughout. Okay? Okay. To envisage an omniscient person, to avoid the contingency of ignorance and deception will not be proper. Definitely will not be proper, because such envisaging will involve the envisaging of an omniscient person, his being free from drawbacks of ignorance and deception, and envisaging that he composed the work considered as authority. Here, his omniscience is the first postulation, his freeness from all drawbacks is the second postulation, his non-deceptiveness is the third postulation, his authority is the fourth postulation, and the authority of his composition is the fifth postulation. This amounts to postulating too many things, is it not? Which is not observed elsewhere. Hence, it cannot be claimed as an authority, because it follows a series of postulations. And it is not scientific also. Even here, a good reasoning will lead to a perfect inference on this. Let us do that. See, all philosophies existing and the philosophers who have found them are individual persons who have in turn composed their own sacred scripts. For Muslims, Prophet Muhammad's Quran is the authority. For Christians, Bible is the authority. For Buddhists, word of Buddha. For Jains, words of Arhan, and so on. If all these godly persons are omniscient, perfect, and are not subject to any sort of mental and physical defect, then how come their philosophical thinking controverts the other? An omniscient is omniscient only. Is it not? If all philosophers are omniscient, can their thinking, can their philosophies differ? Tell me. In fact, each philosophy counters, denies, refutes, and stands opposite to others. Now, which philosopher is a real omniscient? Who can answer this? Is there any authority to prove this? Who is trustworthy? Who is trustworthy? Who can conduct the litmus test here? And how? Is it not? Let us not believe blindly. Can we believe blindly? No, not at all. Dear friends, here I want to share one of my experience with you regarding this situation. Once I came across father of a church. Of course, it was a goodwill meet. I asked him, how did you believe Jesus Christ? And the words of Bible. And how do you claim that the Bible is an authority or a means to valid knowledge? As it deals with basics, the objects like angels, evils, God, soul, which are extrasensory. You don't believe. Even I didn't. The father said, we don't crack our mind on that. We just believe. That's all. I repeat. He said, we don't crack our mind on that. We just believe. That's all. Please tell me, is this justified? Please think. We are in a highly advanced scientific world. Still our belief is blind. Still our belief is blind. If anybody wants to admit that these philosophers are the messengers of God, if anybody wants to admit that these philosophers are messengers of God, the God is omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, and unaffected by all sorts of deficiencies, has to be accepted, and they, that is these philosophers, simply composed whatever God has taught and directed them to do so. And that's it. This is what the explanation they give. Well, if this is the admission, then they have to face two strong and tough questions. Question number 1. If all philosophers are messengers of God, then their gods are different because their philosophies are different. Again, the question whom to trust or to believe. Whose God is perfect or who is the real God? Again, what is the authority to believe that he is the messenger of God? His own self-proclaimed wordings? No. The question number 2. Our subject itself is about the extrasensory objects like God, dharma, adharma, punya, papa, that is unseen merits and demerits, etc. And on what authority we can believe these extrasensory objects is our inquiry. In other words, God, the extrasensory object, is yet to be proved. Is yet to be proved by a perfect authority. They can't claim that they are the messengers of God. Who is the real messenger? Again, which is that authority? Again, what is the authority to claim or believe? So, with this intellectual reasoning and analysis, the inference is, human world is subject to the mental and the physical defects of ignorance, prejudice, deceitfulness, etc. It need not be held as authentic to convey the truth in entirety unless it is proved to be beyond the influence of all deficiencies. So, a word unaffected by all sorts of deficiencies has to be accepted to expound the extrasensory objects like God, soul, dharma, adharma, punya, papa, hell, heaven, angels, etc. See, we have already seen agama, the verbal testimony, is the only means to valid knowledge of extrasensory objects. Again, on the two folds of agama, that is Paurushaya, human composition, and Apaurushaya, non-human composition, we have critically studied and analyzed the deficiencies of Paurushaya agama, that is human compositions. Now, the only option left out is Apaurushaya agama, that is non-human composition. And they are the famous Vedas, scientifically proved as the oldest literature of the world's history. The Vedas are the only authority on extrasensory objects like God, soul, dharma, adharma, punya, papa, etc. Here, I'd like to summarize the points dealt and discussed till now. The point number 1, the question arises in thyself or about extrasensory objects like dharma, adharma, Ishvara, God, soul, etc. Point number 2, the supreme authority has to be accepted in the domain of these extrasensory things. Point number 3, how an atheist or upholder of physical pleasures or a materialist who doesn't believe the extrasensory objects at all is a deadly enemy of humankind. And point number 4, the deficiencies of Paurushaya agama, that is human compositions. The fact that the works composed by an individual cannot be the source to believe or establish the existence of extrasensory objects like dharma, adharma, God, soul, etc. is pointed out. With this, one point is very clear. That is, without an all-round unquestionable validity of verbal testimony, the very existence of extrasensory objects like dharma, adharma, God, soul, etc. cannot be proved. And such a verbal testimony, that is agama, which is beyond the reach of all human deficiencies, that is purusha dosha, is none other than Apaurushaya Veda only. Because that is the only option left out on the subject. Now, the big task here is how to establish the impersonal and revealed nature of Vedas. Again, I repeat, we are in the modern scientific world. We can't just believe or accept just like that. Can we accept the impersonal character and the eternality of Vedas? That is Apaurushayatva and its Nityatva? Can there be a sentence without a composer or an author? Will it not end once again in postulation? On the other hand, the traditional opponents, modern Orientalists and Western philosophers are not ready to accept the impersonal and revealed nature of Vedas as is claimed. Let us enter into the details of this problem. Once again, I request you to give more concentration on this major critical subject, which is highly logical and technical. Let me first tackle the traditional opponents. Okay? Yeah. The fact that the Vedas are revealed and not composed by any individual is self-evident. Because Vedas are known to be without an author by a long tradition. No one has claimed from the remotest period of history up to the present time that he is the author of Vedas. No author of Vedas has been ascertained by any evidence till now. Hence, it is self-evident, not composed by any individual. The question raised here is, can we classify all those sentences or statements for which an author cannot be traced or Vedas? If so, there are many statements, proverbs, for which an author can't be traced. Can we claim that these are Vedas? Can we? See, the names of the composers were forgotten, that's all, and passed off. Same way, Vedic statements also have an author, but can't be traced. Therefore, Vedas are not unauthored. Either its eternality or its impersonal character cannot be established. There are many statements, proverbs, for which an author can't be traced. The names of the composers were forgotten and passed off. Same way, Vedic statements also. Same way, Vedic statements also have an author, but can't be traced. Therefore, Vedas are not unauthored. Either its eternality or its impersonal character can't be established. The answer is, Vedic statements are not like other statements. No other statement can claim to be a Vedic statement because the beginning of such statements can be traced. The beginning of such statements can be traced to a particular point of time, if not to a person. With the scientific methods available today, it's very easy to trace and establish the style, the features of the language used in a sentence to a particular point of time. We know very well that in almost all languages, the pronunciation, the accent, the standard, the style, the spellings, features have changed from time to time. For example, the difference between the old traditional English and today's English itself is an example. The same is the case with other regional languages also. Even the evolution theory of Darwin admits this linguistic changes, a point to be noted. Really a point to be noted. But this is not the case with Vedic statements. This is not the case with the Vedic statements. The entire Veda, in its pronunciation, accent, order of letters, sense of words, spelling, features, etc., is always the same from the remotest period of history up to the present time. The Vedas are only heard, never composed. Hence the name Shruti. They always exist and do not perish. Hence the name Veda and Nitya. Always it is repeated. Hence the name Amnaya. See, these three words are in Veda only. So, a long tradition that informs us that the Vedas have no author is the main ground on which their revealed nature is established. This benefit can't be given to other works for which an author can be ascertained. Is that clear? Shall we move forward? Shall we? Is that clear? Okay? Okay then. Let us discuss the very possibility of a composition without an author. The Vedas are constituted of a group of letters, that is Varnas. Letters are created by the pronunciation of a person and perish soon after. And that is our experience also. So letters are not eternal. Is it not? Even the arrangement of letters in a particular order is the mental exercise. This being the case, and this being the truth, how can Vedas be considered as unauthored and eternal? This objection is rejected by pointing out that letters are eternal. The contention that the letters are created when pronounced and perish soon after is not correct. Because a letter or varna is recognized as the same that was heard on an earlier occasion. To consider letters, that is varnas, are created will be contrary to such recognition. This shows that the letter as such is eternal, and it is only made manifest by the pronunciation. Is that clear? Now, regarding the particular order of letters and words, which again claimed as the exercise of human mind. I repeat, the particular order of letters and words is claimed as the exercise of mind. Then, how can you prove that it is impersonal? Is the question. The answer is, the human minds grasp the Veda in the order in which the same is recited by their teachers. The teacher goes on unfolding the Vedas in a certain order, and the pupils grasp it. Therefore, the order of words is not composed. Just because the teacher goes on unfolding the Vedas, which he has imbibed from his teacher, can anybody claim that he is the composer? No. The letters placed in that order are not composed. The point to be noted here is, mind need not be the origin of the order. It can act as a source or station which can transmit. For example, if one person recites a para from some ancient text, no one will say that he is the composer. Is it not? So, the mental exercise is not the order as claimed, but it is a process of transmission. That's what we call as manifest. Hope that is clear. In order to continue, let us meet tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, friends. Good evening, everybody. Yesterday, we have discussed about the the impersonal character and the eternality of Vedas. I tried to explain regarding the particular order of letters and words which are claimed as the exercise of mind. The Vedas are the only source to know about extrasensory objects like God, soul, etc. See, regarding this order of letters and wordings or words, we can also say that the Vedas are ever present in God's mind. The presence of Vedas in God's mind is not composed at any given point of time. Therefore, the order of words or letters are not composed. here the difference between the human minds and God's mind is to be understood properly. Human minds are not eternal, whereas God's mind is eternal. Hence, the order of Vedic letters, words are also eternal and impersonal. Here, I'd like to bring you to your notice that even in the world's famous and ancient scripture, Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Vedaischa sarvaihi ahameva vedyo Vedanta kritu Veda videva chaham. It means, I am conveyed by the entire Vedas. I am the one who formulated the sutras, that is 564 formulae, through which one can know the exact meaning of Vedas, that is Vedanta. And I know very well the meaning of entire Vedas. So, the Lord Krishna himself has admitted that he is conveyed by Vedas and he is not a composer. Hence, Vedas are beyond the reach of human deficiencies like ignorance, apratipatti, doubt, vipratipatti, and error, annatha pratipatti. And that is why they are accepted as perfect valid proofs. Another inquiry may arise at this juncture, and that is, why can't we accept that God himself, who is beyond the zone of human deficiencies like ignorance, apratipatti, doubt, vipratipatti, error, annatha pratipatti, etc., is the author of Vedas? What will be the problem? Why can't you accept this? Is the inquiry. And now, if we accept that God himself is the composer or author of Vedas, then we will land in a clear case of interdependency, that is anyonyashraya dosha. That is, to prove or to establish the very existence of God, who is beyond all human deficiencies, we need to accept an authority which is unaffected by all sorts of deficiencies. Is it not? And which is none other than Veda only. Unless Vedas are authoritative, it is impossible to establish God and his reliability. So, neither the validity of Veda nor the reliability of God is established. Hence, this inquiry fails miserably in its attempt to earn authoritativeness of Vedas. Hope that is clear. You're finding it difficult? No? Well, we are discussing and analyzing the objections raised by the traditional opponents who deny the apurushayatva, that is the impersonal character or authorlessness of Vedas. Let us deal with some more objections. In Vedas itself, we come across statements conveying a sense of their creation. For example, Ruchassamani Jagnire, Yajustasmatajayata, and so on. Which means Samaveda was born of Rigveda. Ajurveda is born. Not only that, even some of the Vedic texts are known after the names of some rishis, that is Vedic seers, like Vasishtha, Vamadeva, etc. Some Vedas mention cities like, some Vedas, that is Vedic statements, mention cities like Kikata, Abhimukta Kshetra, and names of the persons like Harishchandra, Janamejaya, Yudhishthira, Yama, Indra, Varuna, who came into existence in some historical era. The inclusion of personal references like I, you, he are also there in Vedas. So, the association of these personal factors will militate against the impersonal character of Veda, that is Apaurushayatva. So, what is the anti-militancy is the question. Here, in this context, such personal references are to be explained satisfactorily. The statement of creation or production of Vedas in Vedas itself should be understood in the sense of manifestation, or it may refer to the birth of the deities presiding over the Vedas. Traditionally, it is referred as Abhimani Devata. Is that clear? Okay. The Vedas heard in previous births flash on the minds of seers or rishis in the next birth. The spontaneous revelations of some Vedic passages to such seers is purely by the grace of God. Hence, some of the passages in Veda go after the names like Vasishtha, Vamadeva, Vishwamitra, etc. They are remembered because they were the first teachers or expounders to the world. Just like Newton's fame. The laws of gravity does exist, but it was first expounded to the world by Newton. Hence the name Newton's laws of gravitation. Is it not? Same way, the seers are only for promoters of respective passages of Veda. It doesn't affect the impersonal character and eternality of Vedas. Clear? Now, regarding the mention of persons like Harishchandra, Yudhishthira, Yama, Indra, and personal references like I, you, he, etc., these do not refer to a particular individual or person. They are not proper nouns, but only common nouns which are true for all times, past, present and future. The mention of transitory objects in Vedas, that is Anityavastu, does not conflict with the eternality and impersonal character of Veda. They are all common nouns again, abiding for all times. Now, I am dealing with Buddhists. These Buddhists are strong and main traditional opponents. Hope you are following. They say Vedas are invalid because they are hollow statements, self-contradictory, repetitions, meaningless, and against our very perception. So, let us deal with these objections one by one. The first one, Yadanatam Tadapramanam. That which is hollow or false is an invalid statement. The statement, Putrakamaha Putrakameshtya yajeta. One desiring to have a son should perform the sacrifice called Putrakameshti. This is an hollow statement of Veda because though it is performed, a son is not born. If one statement of Veda is false, then the reliability of Veda itself is gone, and even its validity. This objection is not true. The non-yielding of fruit as stated in Vedic statements is due to other causes. When all auxiliary conditions of the stated sacrifice are fulfilled, the fruit is found to have happened. The historical records are the proofs in this regard. So, this objection is not true. The next one, Anubhava Viruddhatvat Apramanam. The statement which goes against our very perception is invalid. In Vedas, Mrudabravit, Apa Aikshanta, Tatteja Aikshanta. The earth, that is soil, spoke it. The water saw. The light is looking, etc. These are the statements which go against our perception, is it not? Has anybody perceived earth speaking and water saying? No, not at all. Hence, these Vedic statements are invalid. This argument is baseless. This argument is really baseless because these statements of Vedas are referring to the deities presiding over earth, water, light, etc. and not the non-sentient subjects like earth, that is soil, water, etc. Is that clear? Now, the next objection is Savyahatancha Pramanam. Self-contradictory statements are invalid. In Vedas we find statements like Udite Juhoti, Anudite Juhoti. One should offer oblation at sunrise and not at sunrise. So this is self-contradictory and invalid. This again is refuted by stating that these statements are to be understood with a reference to context of the time of sacrifice in which the oblation is offered. Some are to be performed before sunrise and some are after. That's all. No contradiction at all. The next one is Punaruttanja Pramanam. Repetition is invalid. There are full of repetitions in Vedas. Hence they are not valid. For example, Satyam Bhida, Satyam Bhida, Satyam Bhida. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And so on. This argument is also baseless because the repetitions will only confirm the previous statements with greater emphasis, with greater emphasis. Is it not? So, and the last one, the last objection from Buddhists is nirarthakancha apramanam. That is, meaningless is invalid. The Vedas are full of meaningless words like atak, jarayapi, kanuka, etc. These words are not found in profane usage. They are meaningless, hence invalid. The cause of this objection is nothing but ignorance only. Because if one doesn't make the meaning of Vedic words like atak, jarayapi, etc., it is the fault of the scholar who is not equipped with the knowledge of Vedic word power. So, it is a clear-cut show of his ignorance and nothing else. Hence, the Vedic words which are impersonal are meaningful and authentic. In fact, all units, terms, letters of alphabets, all sounds and vibrations are meaningful if known properly. So with this, we have come to an end of traditional opponents' positions and their refutations. Here, I'd like to clear one important point before I move on to next objections. And that is, the arguments advanced till now and to be followed are not intended to establish the validity of knowledge derived from Vedas, but are intended to remove the objections and doubts that attempt to show the invalidity of Vedic knowledge. You know very well that the validity of any cognition or knowledge is self-evident. If again its validity is to be confirmed by another cognition, then the third cognition will be needed to confirm the validity of the second cognition, and so on. This leads to infinite regress, that is anavastha. Is that clear? Hence, it is noticed that the self-validity, supreme authority, and the unique impersonal character of Vedas are accepted by all philosophers and thinkers from the remotest period of history up to the present time. Was that clear? So, till now, we have seen how the arguments of traditional opponents regarding the invalidity of Vedas are unsound and unacceptable. Now, the modern opponents who comprise the Orientalists and advocates of social sciences. Now, the modern opponents who comprise the Orientalists and advocates of social sciences and their objections are to be tackled. And let us tackle tomorrow. Thank you. Good evening, friends. Good evening, everybody. On this happy occasion of festival, my hearty greetings to one and all. Till now, we have seen how the arguments of traditional opponents regarding the invalidity of Vedas are unsound and unacceptable. And today, let us deal with modern opponents. The modern opponents who comprise the Orientalists and advocates of social sciences. From the barbarity to the state of civilization, the physiological changes in an organic body, and that is the theory of evolution by Mr. Darwin. This Darwin's theory of evolution is pressed into service in explaining the events of history, linguistic changes, progress of social and political institutions. This being freely adopted by modern scholars, especially by eminent Orientalists like Roth, Max Muller, Whitney and others. These Orientalists, remaining in their own country, have struggled hard to study the Vedas and their oldest commentaries with the help of Brahmin scholars. All the commentators from the remotest period of history, with one voice, have advocated and established the apaurushayatva, that is, the impersonal character and the supreme authority of Vedas. Somehow, Max Muller couldn't digest, for unknown reasons, Mr. Max Muller couldn't digest either the eternality or the impersonal character nor the supreme authority of Vedas. His research on Vedas and on the history of India, by sitting in his own country with a biased knowledge and supported by theories like evolution, etc., has resulted in the wild stories of Aryan migration, evolution of ideas, and so on. Unfortunately, these Orientalists have treated the ancient Vedic literature as the oldest book of history of Aryan life in India. They declare that the Indo-Aryans have moved to the east, that is to India, after they were separated from Indo-Europeans, whose origin is again west only. And during the rule of East India Company, a new science of philology was introduced to Western scholars. During this period only, they discovered similarities between Sanskrit and the classical languages of West, that is Greek, Latin, Swiss, etc. With these similarities as the base, that is the similarities between Sanskrit and the classical languages of West as the base, Western scholars tried to connect the two groups of people in the West and the East. Intentionally, they declared that the people of West and East as the members of the same race which they called Aryans. Another race speaking the languages quite independent of Sanskrit was designated as Dravidians. The very big mistake done by these Orientalists is, it's really a big mistake, they bifurcated people on the grounds of language and color of skin. This has resulted in hatredness of each other, and its effect still remains in India. Hope you are understanding what I am referring to. What a mistake is this? They say the skin of Aryans is white and that of Dravidians is black. One migrated from west and another from east. So, as per them, there is no original Indian at all. India has no history is the bold statement of Max Muller. Can you believe this? What an amount of irony and ignorance of history. After all, what more we can expect from an ignorant person who sits in his own country and does all sorts of mistakes in the name of research. That too on the history of another nation. The ingratitudeness of Max Muller is also clear from his works. He indulges in calling Brahmins as willy Brahmins and willy priesthood. He could have thought twice before indulging in such denouncement, because his scholarship on Vedas was the gift of the Brahmins. What a height of ingratitude. Can you imagine this? Can you? It's really sad. It really hurts. These Orientalists say Aryans migrated from their western home to Himalayas through Turkey, Persia, Afghanistan, and settled on banks of Sindhu River and its tributaries. The Aryans composed Rig Veda in Punjab, where the 5 great rivers flow. This event has been fixed by Orientalists at 1500 BC. That is much more later than the works of their brothers in West. After that, Vedic literature grew in bulk with the fresh compositions. The Vedas contain prayers, method of offering oblations, singing at the sacrifice, etc. The names of the composers or the authors were forgotten. The Vedic literature passed off as unwritten, that is Apaurushaya. This is the explanation given by Orientalists. It is unfortunate that in India today, all school textbooks on its own history have incorporated the Orientalist views, that is, Indus Valley civilization, Aryans, Dravidians, migration from east, west, etc. It is really unfortunate that people of India will study their own history wrong. What an amount of tragedy is this? Really unfortunate. At this point, I would like to quote Professor Subhash Kak, a noted historian and a researcher. He has done the research on Vedic science continuously for 15 to 20 years. He is a professor at the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the Louisiana State University, USA. I quote from his speech at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, which was reported on 16th of June 2001 in Indian Express. The points he noted are: number 1, ancient Indian astronomy and chronology has indigenous origin and were not borrowed from the Greek as some Western historians made it out to be. Point number 2, the concept of algebra is attributed to the Greek by Western historians, which is not true. Which is not true. Algebra was known to Indians way back in the Vedic era itself, and that the Westerns copied the concept of algebra from Indians. Point number 3, Indian culture had a continuous history that dates back to 8000 BC and not 1500 BC as cited by Max Miller and other Orientalists. The point number 4, Mr. Kak also says in California his findings were accepted and incorporated in school textbooks. He also declares that his recent scientific research findings are setting the record straight. So, with this, it is very clear that the line of arguments by Orientalists in respect of Orient migration is baseless and hollow. Even the theory of Indus Valley civilization has no proper base. Whether it is pre-Aryan or post-Vedic is still a question under discussion. So, there is no consensus of opinion among the Orientalists themselves on these problems. Each is holding quite an opposite view of the other. They are bound to remain inconclusive, hence cannot be accepted. Who are they to fix a time for eternal Vedas? Who are they? I can only say that the present generation of India are ill-fated. Let us wake up. My dear friends, let us wake up. Try to know our own great history in its true sense. Once again, I conclude with Professor Kak's wordings. Please hear. In California, my findings on Vedic literature and history of India were incorporated in school textbooks. But in India, a section of academia have reservations about such ideas. They apprehend that such findings may be misused by a political party that they do not like. I repeat, Mr. Kak's wordings, but in India a section of academia have reservations about such ideas. They apprehend that such findings may be misused by a political party that they do not like. What an irony. What a shame. I would like to know How many of you know this? Please wake up. It will be too late if you won't wake up. Let us pass on the true history to our next generation. Hope you will. Will you? Yes? Very good. That really sounds good. Really sounds good. Now, as I stated in the beginning of this discussion, we are in a modern scientific world. So, with the scientific background, that is a modern science, can we accept the very impersonal character and the eternality of Vedas on a scientific background? In other words, is this scientific? And that is the challenging question. That is really a challenging question. First of all, what exactly is science? What exactly is science? As we all know, it is a systematic study of existing things. All scientists have admitted that at a fundamental level, there is something and not nothingness. All scientists have admitted that at a fundamental level, there is something and not nothingness. Now, why we are left with this particular something, that too with the laws of nature? On the other hand, what is life? What does it mean to act? What is the purpose? What is consciousness and mind? What constitutes the identity of a person? On a purely scientific level, we cannot find answers to these questions. No matter how much we study the data, or how much we study the data, or how much data we study. So, the upshot is, both philosophers and modern scientists accept some things are eternal and never perish. That is beginningless, anadi nitya. The atoms are existing on themselves. Energy cannot be created nor be destroyed. Time, space, sound, source of raw materials are all eternal. These are the fundamentals to science, but cannot be tested with scientific method of science itself. And that is the meta-science. It is the pre-scientific and pre-philosophical insight accepted by the first scientists. The things not subjected to physical observations or measurement can be proved or disproved by science. But there are ontological principles which we come to recognize as self-evident. The whole generation of scientists admitted that consciousness was a mystery and a challenge that had to be taken seriously by science. Well, with this background, one thing is clear, that things existing on themselves are accepted throughout, and it is not unscientific. So, just because the substances or objects like God, soul, dharma, adharma are beyond our sense perception cannot be simply denied. Is it not? They may exist. They may exist. On a purely scientific method, no one can disprove them. With the proper scientific methods of collection of data, we can prepare a model which can be used to structure the data through which we can arrive at good results. And that is what we have done all these days in our discussion. A systematic study and approach. Now, it seems reasonable to assume that the laws of nature are manifestations of a sophisticated mind. And that's what quantum physics admit. So, the impersonal character and eternality of Vedas can be accepted. The Vedas, which are present in God's mind, are manifested by God Himself. Hence the order of letters, words, sequence, pronunciation, style, everything of Vedas are eternal and impersonal. The God or His mind itself is a transmitter, but not a composer. I quote the revelations of Albert Einstein's mind. Einstein's mind. He admits, I quote, "My firm belief, a belief bound up by or bound up with deep feelings in a superior mind that reveals itself in the world of experience, represents my conception of God." Though human minds and God mind can expose, can also compose the words or sentences. Human minds and God's mind can compose words or sentences. Still, it can act as a station of the order of letters and words and transmit whenever minds. The Vedas are ever present in God's mind. The presence of Vedas in God's mind is not composed at any given point of time. They simply exist and ever present in God's mind. Hence Vedas are impersonal and eternal. Dear friends, I don't want to go in detail. I can only say modern science has only widened and deepened the gap that are ontological and not scientific. The more we learn about the world, the greater the mystery. I quote Mr. Adalati, a NASA scientist. He says, if there is one lesson to be learned from science, it is that things are usually much more complex than they first appear. Those who say that the study of science makes a man an atheist must be rather silly. Those who say that the study of science makes a man an atheist must be rather silly. Thus stated by famous quantum physicist Mr. Max Born. So, let us not forget that the great minds that have given us modern science held a religion view of the world. And that religion view is indelibly an integrated one. Now, the last inquiry on the validity of Vedas. And that is, if Vedas are perfect, revealed, impersonal, eternal, beyond the influence of all deficiencies, self-valid, supreme authority, and so on, why then the different school of thought came into existence in India? Each school of thought is different and they counter each other. Each interpret in their own way, and in turn they all claim the authority of Vedas for their school of thought. Well, when this is the situation, then the validity of Vedas itself is under question. This has to be analyzed. Let us analyze this situation carefully. See, because of its inherent power, that is what we call as Shakti, because of its inherent power, a word is capable of several meanings. Sometimes we may have to switch over to secondary meaning of the word when primary or inherent meaning is not suitable. Is it not? Of course, it all depends on the context we use the words. So, a word or sentence which is personal has only one primary meaning or sometimes a secondary meaning. It depends upon the person who means it at the time of delivery. On the contrast, a word or sentence or a statement which is impersonal has many meanings because it is impersonal. Because it is impersonal. Hence, the different interpretations of Vedas. Is that clear? Sometimes even the opposite views. To solve this problem, that is, to decode the language which is inbuilt in Vedas, God Himself, who is the transmitter of Vedas, has formulated 564 sutras or formulae, through which one can solve the problem of interpretation of Vedas. We know very well that to solve a problem in mathematics, formulae are required. Even if formulae are provided, a person should know how, when, unto which problem an appropriate formula should be applied. Is it not? And this depends upon each individual intelligence. So, in the same way, the various self-posed scholars, philosophers attempted to interpret Vedas by using these formulae. Hence, the divergent views depending upon their intelligence. Just like in an examination hall, some will fail, some will pass, some with distinction, and only one or two will secure rank. It is as simple as this only. Is it clear? Now, to interpret the Vedas, God Himself has shown some guidelines. While interpreting scriptural statements, one should not be carried away by mere wordings of the statements. Some canons of interpretation ought to be followed. This has been accepted widely. The 7 canons laid down are Upakrama, commencement; Upasamhara, conclusion; Abhyasa, repetition; Apurvata, novelty; Phala, fruitfulness; and Upapatti, logical reasoning. In other words, these are nothing but the canons we follow in our day-to-day life, that is, the reference to context. Any sentence or word is understood or explained always with reference to context only. No one will be carried away by mere literal meanings of the wordings. So, the person with pure mind and with an imbibed extraordinary intelligence follows these canons and apply the proper formula to solve the problem. He will be the great exponent of true knowledge, and he will be the decoder of the inbuilt language of Vedas. Hence, the validity of Veda is unquestionable. Its self-validity, eternality, and impersonality prevails forever. At this point, with an open mind, I honestly admit that such a genius decoder and the great exponent of true or valid knowledge is His Holiness Sri Sri Anandatirtha Bhagavat Padacharya, who is famous as the great Madhvacharya. History has never seen such a philosopher. Never seen. An extraordinary thinker with scientific and intellectual approach. Really an extraordinary thinker with scientific and intellectual approach. Madhvacharya admits that the three channels through which one can secure valid knowledge are: number 1, accurate perception with senses; number 2, flawless reasoning, that is valid inference; and number 3, divine revelation, that is verbal testimony. Through any one of these three, one arrives at knowledge that corresponds to what is real, to truth itself. The very subject chosen and discussed till now is based on the intellectual works and insights of the great Madhvacharya only. Finally, I want to say a few words about this discussion. It was only an introductory discussion, keeping in mind the beginners who are not exposed to philosophy. Receiver end is always important. Whenever, wherever, whoever is delivering. With the hope that a bit of inquiry in your mind on this delicate and important subject will start. With the hope that a bit of inquiry in your mind on this delicate and important subject will start, I conclude. Finally, a must and a humble acknowledgement with gratitude at the lotus feet of my great master, His Holiness Sri Satyatmatirtha Swamiji of Uttaradi Mutt, and to my master Pandit Jayatirthacharya. On this occasion, I must acknowledge with gratitude that I have received help from the writings of scholars Sri R.S. Panchamukhi and Professor K.T. Pondarangi. So, let us meet once again. Thank you, one and all. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.